President Trump's influence over the Republican Party is about to face another set of key tests. Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy and Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie both face Trump-backed primary challengers in the coming days. They're the latest targets in the president's effort this cycle to oust incumbent members of his own party that he's deemed insufficiently supportive of his agenda. Most recently in Indiana, 5 out of 7 Republicans who had opposed the president's redistricting push were defeated in their primaries. Louisiana Republican Senator Bill Cassidy originally drew President Trump's ire as one of the few Republican senators who voted to convict him during his impeachment trial after the January 6th riot. Cassidy faces 2 challengers in tomorrow's primary race, State Treasurer John Fleming and Congresswoman Julie Letlow, who has Donald Trump's endorsement, a fact she's touted heavily in campaign ads.
Cassidy and Fleming, never Trumpers, we'll never, ever vote for.
I'm thrilled to give my complete and total endorsement to your next United States Senator from Louisiana, Julie Letlow.
While President Trump is backing Letlow, a Trump political advisor recently told NBC News the president and his advisors are more focused on defeating Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie. That primary is coming up on Tuesday, with Massie facing a challenge from his Trump-backed opponent, Ed Gallrein. Massie spoke to my colleague Julie Tsirkin about why he thinks his race is a referendum for his party.
I vote with the party 90% of the time, but there's 10% of the time where I think my constituents are better served by a different vote. If more people would speak up, and I think that is, you're getting to the nub of why they're attacking me and why this is the most expensive race in the history of Congress, congressional primaries. It's because they want everybody else to go along to get along. And if they let one guy come up here and vote his conscience and vote the way he campaigned and vote for his constituents instead of rubber stamping the party menu that day, then there might be others who are encouraged to do that. And so that's why I'm fighting so hard. This is a fight worth winning. It's a national referendum. There'll be international cameras at my election day victory party because it has ramifications.
Congressman Massie's race is just one of several key primary races we will be watching on Tuesday. Joining me now is the panel, Kadia Goba, politics reporter for Notice, Chuck Rocha, Democratic strategist and president of Solidarity Strategies, and Republican strategist Matt Gorman. He is also an NBC News contributor. Thanks to all of you for being here as we are about to head into an exciting series of primary races, starting with Saturday night. Kadia, let me start with you on this Cassidy race. How much jeopardy is he in? Could Julia Letlow pull off a win, or is this going to go to a runoff? How do you see it?
Yeah, you know, polling a month ago suggested that he wasn't doing well. Cassidy was about a few points under Letlow, as well as Fleming. He's polling under them. So it'll be interesting, but at the same time, there's about 22% of voters who are undecided. So it'll be interesting to see where that 22% falls, right? Like, has the president's decision around gas prices impacted some of their decision? Are they going, this is obviously going to be a vote for the president or against the president, I think, and it'll be between his endorsed candidate and whether or not Cassidy has a chance.
Yeah, and we're seeing a similar dynamic play out with the race for Thomas Massie's seat. He says he's voted with Republicans 90% of the time, but boy, it's hard to think of a Republican congressman who's been more outspoken and broken with President Trump on more issues publicly. The Epstein files, voting against the big, beautiful bill. Matt, how do you see that race playing out with Ed Gallrein?
Yeah, I mean, I think Massie's in a lot of trouble. You can't at 1 minute say, accuse the Trump administration of being, quote, the Epstein administration, as Thomas Massie has done, and then the next breath brag how much you vote with Donald Trump. I think it's a little disingenuous. But look, I think, you know, Massie had an advantage to start. Gallrein's come on. I think, you know, especially this will be the only big primary in Kentucky because you don't really have as much of a competitive Senate race driving a ton of turnout, especially in Massie's district. So I think, you know, Massie is going to be in a lot of trouble. Now, what I'm curious about is if he goes down, what does he do for the next 5 months or so, they still essentially need his presence in Congress?
Yeah, it's a great question. What are you going to be watching for, Chuck?
Well, first of all, there's nothing like the smell of Republicans fighting each other in the afternoon here in Washington, D.C. Us Democrats love that. Let me explain what I mean by that, is that every dollar that's spent in this primary in Kentucky or in a primary in Louisiana, where these folks don't have to be spending money against each other, they could be spending on beating Democrats. So it's a good thing for the Democrats. The next point is this Massie thing has become the most expensive primary in the history of Kentucky. And the last thing in Louisiana we should remind everybody is that it's a top 2 system. There's a chance that the incumbent does not even make the runoff. But there's a lot of craziness going on right now.
What about that point about the dollars and cents of this, Matt, and the concern? And I've spoken to some Republicans who say we are having to put money into races that we don't necessarily.
$35 million in Indiana.
Well, Massie already votes like a Democrat, so we're essentially putting money to defeat a Democrat. It's pretty big, 10%. You just mentioned it there. I mean, procedural votes, congratulations. So again, we can defeat Thomas Massie there. I think the other part is, Chuck does make a point on this. There is a very good chance that Cassie does not make the runoff. I mean, Fleming has come on strong. Letlow struggled to start her campaign, but has escalated. And again, Fleming's a former congressman in and of itself. He's not a nobody. He actually served in the seat Mike Johnson took over for. So that is something to watch very closely. A Letlow versus Fleming runoff is certainly not out of the question, where Cassidy, again, nowhere to be found.
Look, it's really, really important to know that this is a Saturday election. It's a Republican primary. There's one place Donald Trump is still a superstar, and that's in a Republican low turnout primary. That means these folks love Donald Trump. That's why it's not too good for Cassidy.
Kadia, let's talk about Georgia. A lot to talk about there. We've got the Senate race there. Brian Kemp, the governor, supporting Derek Dooley. He's the former football coach who's facing off against 2 members of Congress. The race to try to unseat Jon Ossoff, the Democrat there. What are you going to be watching for?
Obviously, who is the next candidate to run against Ossoff? Many people have kind of positioned themselves as Dooley, backed by the governor, right, is a lot of people are favoring Dooley. It'll be interesting to see where Collins pulls off. And obviously, a lot of people I talk to want to see a Collins run against Ossoff, clearly, but it doesn't seem like it might. It'll be interesting to see if it goes that way. It's not clear that it will, but I'm hearing a lot of people are starting to look at how this general election might face off, and I think more resources are going to Dooley at this point.
Well, and we actually have some sound. Let's listen to Brian Kemp and Dooley talking about this race.
It's time we send people up to D.C. with some common sense that represent our values, but most importantly, what I'm telling voters is going up there for the right reasons, and that's to work with others to deliver results. That's what has been failing up in Washington, D.C., and that's why we need a political outsider.
I have a very strong belief it's going to take a political outsider to beat Jon Ossoff in this race, just like Dave McCormick did in Pennsylvania, Bernie Moreno did in Ohio, Tennessee, he did in Montana. That's why we're working so hard for Derek.
Matt, what do you make of this? I mean, Kadia's laid out the stakes. I mean, how do you see this playing out? Is this going to go to a runoff?
I think it's very likely to go to a runoff. The fight is between, I think, Buddy Carter or Derek Dooley. Derek Dooley struggled for a time. He had the Kemp machine behind him. There is a thought that if he can get to a runoff, that's where it actually can mobilize and overtake Collins a little bit. But I think the question is, can he get to that second position?
Democrats are pretty confident in Jon Ossoff right now, Chuck, and yet the governor clearly putting all of his political capital behind his candidate. And once this goes to a general election, you anticipate we'll see the same.
The #1 grassroots fundraiser in the Democratic Party for the last 18 months have been Jon Ossoff. That means folks have been giving him money, $5, $10, $20 at a time. He's raised an incredible amount of money, and as an incumbent, that's what you should do. Going back to this Republican runoff, I'll go back to my previous statement of Donald Trump is still very popular in this, and in a Republican primary, you're only going to have these right of the right voters. And in a runoff, if it goes that far, it's just like Texas. It's even more of the right of the right. Regular folks don't vote in a turnout.
What's so fascinating about Georgia, Matt, are the dynamics between President Trump and some of these Georgia Republicans, and the fact that that is adding this extra layer to so many of these races, including the gubernatorial.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Kemp and Trump have buried a lot of the hatchet over the last 6 years, especially in the last 2 years.
But you got Raffensperger.
Raffensperger's a different case, I think. And again, we'll see. I believe he's running as well, not for Senate, obviously, but from other positions. So we'll see how that goes. You know, again, I think this is a race that Republicans recognize they're the underdog going into the general election, but are hopeful maybe they can make it a race and see what happens.
Watch the suburbs around Atlanta. Watch the Democrat and Republican turnout. See what the turnout looks like compared to each other. Those suburbs used to be ruby red. They've turned purple and now are leaning very much blue. That's where this election's won and lost in November.
All right, we're going to watch it all closely. Thank you all for a great Friday conversation, Kadia, Chuck, and Matt. Tune in tomorrow for special coverage of the Louisiana midterm primaries with the great Steve Kornacki at the big board starting at 9 p.m. Eastern on NBCNews.com. And then you don't want to miss this. On Tuesday, I'll be joined by my colleagues Hallie Jackson, Steve Kornacki, and our team of reporters for special primary coverage as the results come in. Matt Gorman's going to be there with me. It all kicks off at 6:30 Eastern right here on NBC News Now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.